Hello, welcome to another in our ongoing series, this one on the region of Asia, specifically South Asia, or as we would know it today, India. We will be briefly reviewing when we last spoke about this region and then talking about some important developments and changes during the late Bronze Age into the Axial Age. When we last covered South Asia, we referred specifically to the Indus Valley region up in the northwestern part of modern-day India and the current country of Pakistan. This is the location of some of the first urban spaces in the world. We discussed the importance of monsoon winds, which blow off of the Himalayas in the winter, cool, dry winds, and then change direction in the summertime, blowing off of the sea, warm, wet winds. And these nice, reliable winds help to facilitate trade. We also discussed these as the location of the first instance of indoor plumbing, and the fact that we still do not know much about these regions due in large part to the fact that, yes, they had writing, but we still cannot decipher or read it. Around about the year 2000, this region begins to undergo a transformation very similar in its time period to changes happening in China, which we will discuss later. But unlike China, these changes are not prompted by turmoil and war, but specifically through population migrations. New groups of people move in, people who we come to identify as the Vedic peoples, moving from the Indus region in the north onto the plains of India and the Ganges River in the south. We see the ongoing importance of monsoons, those trade winds that blow nice and reliably in different parts of the year, but also the emergence of new rice cultivation. Prior to this, most plants in the region and agriculture was wheat-based, but now the emergence of rice is more important and is still an ongoing factor in the region today. New types of government, monarchs, specifically kings, one ruler, one person in charge, and oligarchs, or a chosen few. Both of these rulers and leaders are called Raja, as they are throughout much of Indian history going forward. The Vedic peoples spread out of the plains of the middle part of Asia down across the Indus into the Ganges, starting in about the year 2000. They are also often identified by the term Aryans, which comes from a root word, Arias, that means noble. This is the origin or the adoption of the term by Hitler and the Nazis, but aside from being stolen much later by the Nazis, there is no identifiable connection between these Aryans and the later racist ideology put forth. They spread on chariots, and they bring with them cattle for herding and farming, and cows and cattle are an ongoing importance and cultural marker in India today. Importantly, they spread and bring with them new culture and new innovations and new animals and ideas, but not a unified form of government. They are known to historians as the Vedic peoples because they bring with them the Vedas, which translates as wisdom or knowledge. These are poems or stories passed down through oral tradition before ultimately being written down, and they spread culture, knowledge, gods, worship, and ideas. The most famous of these is known as the Rig Veda. It's a long poem sort of praising the gods through story. And we also see the importance of the Upanishads, which are a dialogue or commentary on these holy and wise poems. You will often see translations and words of wisdom from these poems. For example, a person can achieve everything by being simple and humble. We also, at this time, begin to see the emergence of castes. Castes are different social divisions, and these are spurred in part by the arrival of these new populations, who tend to be somewhat lighter skinned than the existing groups of people in the area, and they begin to make up these top two castes. Importantly, these are not yet permanent. They're beginning to emerge. We can trace them back through the poems and other primary sources, but yet not hard and well-defined lines. And they're based on wealth and land ownership, but also tied to purity and cleanliness. Generally, the higher you are in the caste system, the cleaner and the wealthier you are. Lower jobs tend to be poorer and to be dirtier. Ultimately, these will be permanently divided into the caste system and not allow intermarriage or even dining at the same table in the same place with people of a different caste in the long term. We see the shift in this early period from two basic castes of nobles and peasants to the four more traditional castes that you can see here. Brahmins are the priests or academics. You can see two alternate spellings here. Kshatriya are the warriors or kings, as well as the merchants and landowners, and the commoners and peasants. We can also see the literal outcasts, or the untouchables, outside of the actual caste system, who perform the most undesirable jobs, and also, not coincidentally, the dirtiest jobs. Changing times from 1000 to 600 BCE during this axial age. What happens is new groups and the emergence of a new, more streamlined alphabet undermine the authority of the old ruling group, who no longer has sole access to the scriptures, to the poems, to the Vedas, and to literacy. And so they link to the kings, and the kings now adopt an authority spurred in part by these priests and by the gods. But this is also a time of new thought and new diversity springing out of this turmoil. Some important terms to know that apply to all of these different new schools of thought. Brahman, as opposed to the highest caste group, Brahmin. Brahman is the absolute transcendent principle of reality. It's the sort of universal life force, or the universal soul. Atman is your personal soul, your part, your essential self that is one with the larger Brahman, we hope. We also see three important terms here that you may or may not be familiar with. Samsara, the process of life, death, and rebirth, or reincarnation, shown here in this picture as a sort of wheel of life. And as you are born and die and reborn, you travel through this pattern or wheel. Dharma are the rules or codes you should follow, usually tied to your caste. It is a code of conduct or rules for you to adhere to. If you follow your dharma, you gain good karma. Karma are your actions. Do you do what you are supposed to do, or do you ignore your dharma? Good karma can lead to rebirth into a higher caste or a higher level. Bad karma, by not adhering to one's dharma, can lead to rebirth into a lower caste in the process of death and rebirth. The most popular then and now school of thought or religion in the region is the Hindu religion. It is not really a strongly defined religion. It is more a bunch of different cults and schools and customs and belief all linked together by one general term. There are many different gods. Three of the most important are Brahma, shown here at the top, Vishnu, who is usually in blue, and Shiva. Each of them are an aspect or a part of this larger Brahman or universal life force. Brahma is sort of a god of wisdom and creation. Vishnu is a protector, and he adheres and helps out humans. And Shiva is a god of both life and destruction. The Hindu system relies on and reinforces the caste system. It adheres strongly to the belief that people born into a certain caste must fulfill the tenets of that caste to be reborn into a higher caste. Brahmins, that highest priestly caste, guide the religion and the rituals and the sacrifice, and the goal is rebirth, moving up the caste system until ultimately attaining unity with Brahman, that universal life force. While it is the most popular school of thought emerging in this time in this region, it is not the only one. Another important school of thought that emerges during this time is the Jain religion, started by Vardhamana Mahavira, who's born in about 540 and dies in about 468 BCE. He is born a Kshatriya, that sort of next to top class, the noble caste, the warrior caste, but he leaves home and seeks enlightenment. He is skeptical of the overriding popularity of the Hindu customs and traditions, and he comes to believe that the universe cannot be affected by our actions, that life continues in spite or despite of our best hopes and wishes. Therefore, his belief is that the goal of life is to purify oneself through denial and to achieve bliss or ultimate enlightenment. The fundamental principle of Jainism is ahimsa, no hurt, that the goal is to harm no living thing. They are strongly vegetarian. True Jain monks who live in elaborate monasteries that can be seen here try and harm no plant. So they will only eat things that naturally end up on the ground off of plants or trees. They will not kill a plant, an animal, and often have a veil to prevent themselves even accidentally inhaling a bug or insect. The third school of thought that emerges in this period, in this region, is the Buddhist religion, started by Siddhartha Gautama, or he would say revealed. He is a rough contemporary with the founder of Jainism. He is also a member of the noble caste, and in most stories and traditions is born a prince. He leads a wealthy and sheltered life, but accidentally encounters starving and homelessness and death, and this causes him to question his life, his background, his privilege, and in fact everything. He leaves home at the age of 29, leaving behind his wife and child, and he walks the earth, and he meditates under a tree, and he tries to find the answer to why people suffer. He fasts and he meditates, as you can see here in the picture, and he ultimately achieves enlightenment, and that is what Buddha means, enlightened one. His enlightenment, his moment of realization, is that peace comes not through self-denial and starvation and fasting, a la Jainism, but through balance, and that can help you achieve enlightenment. And importantly, he objects not just to Hindu rituals, but to their whole understanding of the universe itself. He comes to realize in his moment of enlightenment that there are four noble truths. 1, life is suffering. 2, suffering is caused by desire. 3, to end suffering, you must therefore end desire. And to end desire, to avoid attachment, you must follow the Eightfold Path. The ultimate goal of this is nirvana, the peace or bliss of enlightenment, and to break the cycle of death and rebirth, to ultimately achieve nothingness, oneness with the universe, and the end of your personal identity. You need to know these. This is the Eightfold Path. You do not need to know every step along the path, but you should know what they represent. Right views, right intentions, right conduct, right speech, right livelihood, right effort, right thought, and right meditation. You must do these things to adhere to harmony and balance, to be conscious, to be mindful of your actions and your beliefs, to achieve nirvana, and to break the cycle of death and rebirth. Thank you very much, and have a good day.